Do you ever want to dive deeper into the Bible, but you just don't know where to begin or struggle to feel like you even have the time? When you read the Bible, do you get frustrated because you know there is so much more in there? You just have no clue how to get it out. Or maybe you just want to know the Bible better and you're looking for any resource to help. Well, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Context and Color of the Bible podcast. We are two sisters. I'm Erica.
And I'm Veronica.
We love to study the Bible and help others understand it better. When it comes to our own study of Scripture, we have found that in bringing back the context of Scripture, it adds so much to our understanding. It actually adds color to the black and white pages of the text. So, Veronica.
Erica.
You have an email to share with us.
I do. Emily Neal wrote us. She signed up for the newsletter, so that's how she gets to have direct access to email us. So,
woohoo, Emily.
Yes. But she brought up something and I was like, oh, we didn't talk about this. And I love the connection she made because she talks about how at the end of chapter 17
of Deuteronomy,
you get instructions for future kings.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says in chapter 18, then it talks about, hey, by the way, you shouldn't have anything to do with necromancy, sorcery, and conversing with ghosts and spirit. And she did exactly what we hope all of us get to do, where you understand these laws and then you go, oh, I see it lived out in the stories then. Because you have Israel's first king, King Saul. And what does he do towards the end of his life?
He goes to a witch.
Yes.
To find out what's about to happen. And he finds out he's about to die.
Yeah.
It's a really sad story.
I love that because I didn't make that connection because she was like, hey, did you bring up this connection? It was like, oh, no. So that's where, to me, this is why studying with a group is so fun because you're right. I'm so tunnel vision into Deuteronomy right now. I'm not thinking through the connections to the stories. And to me, that was just such a good one. I was like, oh, I have to bring this up. But I don't get to take credit for it. It's totally Emily. So thank you, Emily, for that. But also just a reminder, this is why you study together.
Right.
Bring these things up because you might sit there and go, oh, everyone sees the connection.
But maybe not. We didn't.
Yeah.
We completely forgot about that. So if our other listeners, what connections are you making?
Yes.
We would love to hear from other people because it's just exciting to see, oh yeah, we didn't think about it. We didn't see that one. And as you're seeing them, it's exciting. Share them. Tell your family. Tell your friends. Tell us what God is showing you.
Yeah, because that's what makes Bible study so fun.
Yeah.
So, all right, with that, we're going to get into chapter 20 today. And where I'm going to watch the time. Erica's going to watch the time. Gotcha. We might get into 21. I don't know. It depends on our conversation.
Okay.
But chapter 20 is all about war. And I'm not necessarily going to go through each specific verse or read the specific verses or have Erica read them. But I want to help explain what's going on in this chapter. Because where I was not making the connection between chapter 17 and 18 to 1 Samuel and King Saul, I did make the connection here. Because as you read through Samuel and Kings and you watch Israel undertake wars against the nations like Ammon, Syria, and Moab, you want to pay attention to, are they following God's rules? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? And when are they not doing it? And what are the consequences then? Because if Israel is going to, regardless of whether Israel wants to or not, she's going to fight wars. Because essentially every king back in those days, going to war was a seasonal thing. Every king would do it to expand their kingdom for the glory of their gods. So Israel, even if she says, hey, we're not going to expand our kingdom, we want nothing to do with any of this, other nations are going to be coming and trying to take her land. So she has to protect herself. But with that, Israel is a king under God's leadership. So God is going to set the rules, how you fight, who you fight, when you fight, and what you do with when you're victorious. Because Deuteronomy is going to assume that it's God leading the nation into war. So automatically, you will not just be fighting when you want, how you want. You will only go to war when God tells you to. Because God says, I lost my spot.
God says.
I know. Because I'm going to change that. Deuteronomy does not imply that Israel is to maintain a standing army. It seems to have at least any standing army of significant size.
So a few, like you're allowed to have guards or
Yes.
soldiers, but not a big one.
Yes, the goal for Israel is not to build a big, ginormous army, because ultimately God is your victor. God is the one who is going to take care of you, which is exactly where we start with verse 1. I will have you read that one, Erin.
20 verse 1.
Yes, please.
When you go out to fight your enemies and you face horses and chariots and an army greater than your own, do not be afraid. The Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, is with you.
Yes. So when you fight, God is going with you. So as you look at these bigger nations that have things, Erica's talked about in the Judges podcast on how they had chariots and how Israel didn't have them. And those horses and those chariots allowed them to launch their arrows and their spears at a faster speed with more maneuverability that would give that army with the chariots the advantage. And the Canaanites had them and the Israelites did not. So Israel could very easily look and go, we're outnumbered, we're
Outgunned, outmanned, outnumbered.
Yes. And God goes, Moses reminds them, God's on our side. Don't be scared. Because verse 4 tells them, God says he's going to give them the victory. Now, this is reassuring to the people as a whole, but not necessarily to each individual soldier.
Some will still die.
Yes. God is saying, as a whole, ultimate victory belongs to the collective nation, but not each individual soldier, which is sad.
Mm-hmm.
So then you get verse 7, which I'll have you read that, Erin.
20 verse 7. Has anyone here just become engaged to a woman but not yet married her? You may go home, get married. You might die in battle, and someone else would marry her.
Yes. In verse 6, I should have had you read that too. But if you planted a vineyard and not had it begun yet, all of these are things.
So this is before the battle.
This is before the battle. If you haven't had these things, you don't have to go to battle.
So if an enemy's coming to march against your nation, your home, if you're engaged, if you just planted a vineyard, you're able to stay home.
Yes, because it is engaged, not married. Because under Jewish law, the engagement legally unites the couple prior to marriage. There's one action
Not happening.
that hasn't happened yet. The bride price has been paid. The fiancé is considered legally married, even though the wedding hasn't taken place. Because with all of these, God's going, you know what? You've worked to get to this point. You need to be able to stay and enjoy it in case you do die in battle.
So when is he allowed? Isn't it a year?
I believe it's a year.
After you've been married for a year, then should an enemy come and fight your home, then you are supposed to go defend. Because you've had a year of married life. You may have had a child or have one on the way. Now you can give your life for this.
So to me, I just see God going, you know what?
That's such a gracious gift.
I know. I see you've worked hard. Enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Right.
So because with that, then you go to verse 8 and it talks about if you're afraid or disheartened, you still get to go home. Which is fascinating to me. The Hebrew here for disheartened literally means of soft heart. One commentator put it as cowardly. Because you could believe God's promise of victory, but still be fearful of fighting. A soldier who is afraid is potentially a danger to his fellow soldiers.
Yeah.
You're not in the right mindset. You're focusing on the wrong thing.
And you make a mistake, it could cost other people their lives.
And think about it. Fear is contagious. I mean, I can't remember one of the things when I'm in my logic fallacy classes, I talk about emotions. Are emotions contagious?
Yes, they are. That's actually been proven.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. If you're walking in the woods at night or in the dark and one person gets scared.
Oh, yeah. Everybody gets scared.
I just picture all these like 12 and 13-year-old girls.
Screaming.
How quickly that fear is taken on by everyone else. Same thing in battle. And so God sees that and he goes, you know what? If you are fearful, you do go home because 1, you're a liability to everyone else. And 2, fear is contagious. I need men who are ready for battle.
But I think that also, and obviously I'm not a man, but I would wonder if as a man that would help you to step up a bit and go, no, I'm not going home. I am going to stay. I mean, I can't think of an example, but I feel like that happens in movies or stories where you have someone go, you can go home. It's okay. I know you're afraid. And the guy's like, I am afraid, but I'm going to change it.
But I want this more.
But I want this more. And I'm going to deal with my fear and I'm going to stay. I feel like God is being gracious. If you're absolutely terrified, you can go home. But for some, I feel like that would be a call to
action.
So
I mean, there's just so much when you really start to break down these laws. God really has thought things through.
Right.
So now he says, okay, verse 11, when you go to battle, before you even go to battle, you're going to try to avoid the battle by offering a peace treaty. This was an advance in a world where wiping out an entire town or city was the acceptable norm. Most of the time, this did not happen with the pagan nations.
The peace, trying to
have peace first. And what you would do then is it would be kind of a forced labor. We're going to come
like the Gibeonites.
We're going to, yes.
And Joshua.
Yes. We're going to take over. You're not our slaves. Because truthfully, even if they were slaves, there's been rules we've already talked about. God's put in place about how to treat your slaves. But this is more of a people, hey, instead of wiping you out, you have the option. Just pay a tribute and you can be temporarily used by us to maybe build a project, to do things for us. You can remain alive, but realize we've essentially conquered you in a nice way.
But nobody's died.
But nobody's
We're
died.
Not destroying your homes. You just work for us.
So you have that first option. As Israel's trying to take over the land, that was that option. But then verse 14, the town that refuses to submit is going to be dealt with more severely. So we've given you the chance, and the men who constitute the city's capacity to rebel in the future are the ones who are going to be killed. It's still not a complete wiping out of every living thing.
Right, because you leave the women, the children. It's the young men who are fighting age who, could rebel soon.
Because now, by taking out the men, though, the women, the children, and the livestock are defenseless. So now you take them as your servants. And again, you're not going to turn them into slaves because there's already specific laws about how you treat your slaves. And we're going to get into chapter 21. It forbids the conquering nation from raping
and plundering.
So you have, you just look and go, God, you thought of so many different things and set up so many safeguards. Now,
because it's interesting, verse 15 that says these instructions apply to distant towns, not the towns in the land you're about to possess.
Right. Because verse 16 says, in the cities the nation the Lord has given you as an inheritance, you're going to wipe everything out. So because this is led by God and God has promised the land to Abraham's offspring, there are some cities that will be completely wiped out because this is Israel and you cannot have them living here. Essentially, because these cities are being destroyed based on their actions.
They're wicked.
They are wicked, evil. And God won't wipe out the whole earth and all the wickedness because he promised that to Noah. But on a small scale, he will do it in some cities that he has judged. This is a wicked, evil city.
And like Sodom and Gomorrah. They need to be wiped out. Their sin has spread too far, too high, too deep. They're on my land. It needs to be purged and cleansed. So wipe them out.
So it's not God's looking at, you're this ethnicity. God is basing these on their actions, on their behavior.
Gotcha.
So pay attention to this when the people are engaged in war of what God wanted, when he wanted it, and what he didn't want. So if you're not sure, go listen to our Judges podcast, that series.
Yeah.
You're going to see, but that's what we want. Just like Emily made connections, take these laws and go, when I read these stories.
Look at what they don't do and don't do.
Yes. They knew exactly what they were getting into. And so with that, then we get to verses 19 and 20. Now, it's common in war to destroy your enemy's fruit trees and their fields. Because
you starve them out.
Yeah. And you weaken them economically, physically. And that hampers their ability to fight again in the near future. But God goes, I have different rules. I mean, this to me is so interesting, just the way God pays attention to these details. Because verse 20 tells you that even in a time of war, the natural world is going to be involved, but God wants those fruit-bearing trees to be safeguarded for future generations. Because essentially, the commentator said, if you remove the trees, you actually are destroying food for the next 2 generations.
Yeah, because it takes fruit trees a while to produce.
Yes. So God doesn't let that. He in a way is going, you're not going to have an economical warfare. You are going to allow these people, it's a subsistence living. This is what they need to survive and for the next couple generations. But you are allowed to use those non-fruit bearing trees for construction projects. So it's interesting how God, we just see these levels of distinction that God puts all over, even in the trees. Fruit bearing has a different purpose than the non-fruit bearing. So that's chapter 20, which essentially deals with war. Chapter 21 then goes, if you were to think, okay, God's fine with war, God's fine with death, God's fine with killing, we're going to take it to a smaller scale and look at murder. Because Numbers 35, verses 33 through 34 says, do not pollute the land where you are. Bloodshed pollutes the land. And atonement cannot be made for the land on which the blood has been shed, except by the blood of the one who shed it. Do not defile the land where you live and where I dwell, for I, the Lord, dwell among the Israelites. And so God is saying bloodshed pollutes the land. And ultimately, the person who caused the bloodshed is guilty and must pay the consequences. But then verses 1 through 9, you're going to have a time, potentially, where somebody is murdered, and after investigating, after looking, after searching, you cannot find the murderer. You still have to deal with making things right.
So there's a difference between killing and murder.
Yes.
Killing is okay. If there's a killing to protect my own life, to save someone else's life in a time of war. But murder, because I think what the commandment says, do not murder.
Yes.
And so we need to make that distinction.
That's a good point. Because this is, if you find that person who's been slain in the field.
This person's been murdered.
This person's been murdered. And it seems like time has passed and the killer can't be found, which would say you have an obligation, town, to investigate. You cannot just, oh, well, no big deal, moving on. No, you have some obligations. Go find that person, the murderer. And then after you've done everything you can, if you still can't find it, God is going to provide a way to remove the blood guilt. Because again, sin and consequences of it not only affect the people, it affects the land. And that's one thing I want to keep coming back to is we've studied this of just going, the land is affected. The blessings, it's affected in a good way. And in the cursing, it's affected in a bad way. And so God's going, we've got to make things right. Because ultimately, sin contaminates and spreads. So since your killer cannot be identified and punishing that person is impossible, God is going to provide a ritual removal for the blood guilt. The thought is you're going to go to the nearest town because the thought is the murder came from the closest town.
Makes sense.
And it's only for when it's out in a field because, again, people live in these communities. So if something happens in town, someone's going to have seen something. Someone's going to have heard something. Someone's going to know something.
Chances of it being an unsolved murder is unlikely.
Yes. It's hard because whereas if you're out in the field, you could be alone. There's not as many people around to hear or see. So there's more of a mystery there.
And I think, too, in a field, farming used to be one of the most dangerous occupations.
Oh.
Yeah. Actually, for kids, it was one of the biggest ways kids died in history. Moving them inside into factories was difficult, but it actually saved lives.
Why were they more?
Because in the fields, you're more likely to get sunstroke, accidents with farming tools and implements. Yeah. Death for kids is actually higher in a old farming community like this. Agrarian. And so I just wonder if you could have an accident. What if you trip and fall and the plow hits you in the wrong way or the yoke and boom, you knock yourself dead. And it looks like you were murdered, but you weren't.
Yeah.
Like it was just an honest accident. I guess that just went through my brain.
One object from
Yeah,
behind.
exactly. Like you,
But that makes
accidents
sense.
happen.
Accidents happen.
And now you're looking for someone that doesn't exist, and you could kill an innocent person.
Right. So there are ways then what you would do, because scripture tells us you cannot ignore the homicide. So what God is laying out is that the elders of the town are going to take a heifer to a constantly flowing stream in which the ceremony is to be performed. The killing of the heifer was not a sacrifice. And that's obvious because they're going to break the neck.
Oh, and you don't do that
You
in a
don't
sacrifice.
do that for sacrifices. So this is not a sin offering. The heifer and the valley both are going to symbolize that victim, because that victim had their life cut short. They may have been deprived of producing fruit, whether it's children or grandchildren or just the fruit of their labor. And then you want this done publicly so that in a way it's almost like you're going to reenact the murder by killing of the heifer and then washing it away from the community. It's supposed to be an intentionally unpleasant ceremony with the intention of making a moral statement on the value of human life.
We're going to mourn this person we've lost, a part of our community, and we collectively are mourning and showing this loss.
And by using the officials, the elders of the town, that's in a way representing the whole town. And so you're going to have then this be very public. Everyone's going to be there because it shows everyone is responsible and seeing what happened. Again, ultimately, God's goal is so this doesn't happen. So murder stops happening. But we need to show here's the consequences. This is
right. Something serious happened and we need to deal with it, but we need to deal with it justly. We can't just kill an innocent victim to make people feel better.
right.
And so if we don't know who did it, well, here's a way to have consequences without someone else dying.
Because verse 9 tells us you want to remove and purge. You want to burn the guilt from your midst. We have to do what is right in God's eyes.
So what happened to the heifer after do they eat it or is it gone?
I think it's gone.
Okay.
I don't have that in my notes, and nobody's saying. One commentary said we're not even sure why they have the heifer and the elders come and the hand washing, but it made sense.
Makes sense to burn it then, like it's gone. We're not rejoicing. We are.
Right. And we're not benefiting from it.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But what you want to see is all of this is done publicly. This is all God saying, I see what's going on. Life has value. So if in case you started with chapter 20 going, oh, God's killing everybody
right,
and he doesn't care. No, God's saying even the unsolved murders, there's value in that person who died. And so you watch where God delicately balances life and death. And when with God being the head of the army going, it's time to wipe out an entire city. He's making the judgment call based on their actions. It's not to be Israel just going, hey, we like your city. We want some more territory.
Right. They're to follow. When God says go, they go. When God says don't, they don't. Because God knows, okay, this city, it's time. This city can be spared.
And again, it's within the bounds of the boundaries of Israel. It's only the cities in Israel
are to be all wiped out.
Are to be completely wiped out. The ones outside the land, as they're conquering and growing, you have the option to just serve us. Pay some money, be helpful when we need it.
Right.
So I'm going to end us early today. First of all, because we've gone long so many times. But I want to keep this next part all together because we're going to get into captive women in war and then ending with some other consequences of war that happened to women. So I want to keep that discussion together for next week.
That sounds good. Well, this was interesting. I think you've given us a lot to think about and ponder war and death and God's justice and mercy mixing together. I think one thing I love about Deuteronomy is we so tend to look at the Bible as a list of do's and don'ts.
Yes.
And especially things like Leviticus and Deuteronomy. And you, Veronica, are bringing it like, oh, this isn't a list of do's and don'ts. Here's how to live. Like these are legitimate, practical, God being gracious and merciful to his people. And it's nice to see that and be reminded. And he's a good God.
He's fleshing it out a little more
right.
and going, hey, there's more going on than just my list.
And how much more, how much better would life be if we did follow these things? You know, if we lived like this.
Yes.
I mean, it would make a difference.
Yeah. So I will end with saying, don't forget, we do have that newsletter. That's an easy way. You can go on our website and sign up for a newsletter. It'll come every Monday morning at 7:30 Eastern time. And then you have the option of replying back and like Emily did and sharing what you're learning, which
we'd love to hear.
We always love to hear that. So thanks for joining us and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.